The voice of sharing, Durian ASEAN.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia. Good morning, welcome to Durian ASEAN. This is Grace.
Good morning, this is Gauri, and you're listening to us on our ASEAN Daily that takes place every Monday to Friday at 8 o'clock.
And today is Friday, finally the last day before the weekend.
It's Friday, and of course the weekends are here again, but I won't be around. I will actually be going to Kelantan for my first ever wayang kulit performance.
I think all Durian ASEAN team will be somewhere, not in KL over this weekend. So hope that nothing really bad, incident happening come us. Yeah, because apparently there was another earthquake, but there was quite weak, around 3.7 magnitude, and then it's becoming quite a worrisome because now Sabah is pretty becoming a place for having natural disaster at this moment.
And not just Sabah, but Malaysia as well. We've even received some warnings for earthquakes somewhere in Pahang area, which is actually in the peninsula. And what happened here in Ranau, we've had more than 50 aftershocks that happened since last Friday's 5.9 magnitude quake, which resulted in the death of 18 people.
Yeah.
And this is the most recent one that happened. But like you mentioned, it's a weak one. It's not that serious.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it's surprising how Malaysia has become this earthquake-prone area from the country that used to be so safe, and you don't have to worry about any natural disaster happening.
But I was very curious about this earthquake and natural disaster in Malaysia, and I had a question, how come Malaysia has never had one before and now only it's highlighted? That only to find out that compared to all those popular belief that like we all believe that Malaysia rarely has all those natural disaster, apparently Sabah is actually prone to earthquakes, and then it's not being in the Pacific Ring of Fire. So over the past 16 years, at least 9 earthquakes at Ranau were recorded by the meteorological department, and also at least another 15 and also other parts of Sabah over the last 10 years. But it was just that the people were not educated properly from the government, and then it wasn't really educated properly in terms of bringing the awareness and how we can prepare and how we can face certain situations. So the government must, first and foremost, recognize the need to educate the people and also to create awareness at this point before it gets too late in the future.
So it has actually happened before
Yep.
in Sabah. It's just that we didn't know about it because it wasn't something very serious, very massive. So probably the meteorological department thought, we don't really have to tell people because it's nothing serious, and they didn't expect all these small quakes to actually lead up to something big and something serious like what happened last Friday. So it's time for them to stop hiding things and be transparent with the public, be transparent with people, because if they had released the information earlier and the government or the people were aware that Sabah is actually an earthquake-prone area, then we could have probably done the necessary arrangements and preparation in terms of a rescue team and also an emergency shelter for those people just in case a quake hit Sabah, which it did last Friday, and it sent the whole country into a panic mode. So we can actually prevent that from happening. Just need to get more details from the meteorological department.
That's one thing. And in fact, like you mentioned, all those earthquakes that had happened before, they don't scale really high. The highest could be just a 5.8, but then the average is around 3 or 4. So perhaps perhaps they also thought that, like you mentioned, they didn't take it too seriously. And also Malaysia is sort of well known for not having many natural disaster. And perhaps it's also the government's plan here, where they don't want to put up the image of, also having a lot of natural disaster, where Malaysia is famous for having a lot of tourism sites. So perhaps they were a bit worried that it could affect the tourism side as well.
That's true. Well, Sabah and Sarawak are somewhat a treasure to us, because when you go there, it's totally different from the experience in Peninsula. The environment there, the infrastructure, the things that you can do there, and because of that, Sabah and Sarawak is also being marketed differently in the eyes of the world, and we do not want to market them saying that these are actually earthquake-prone areas. But then again, unfortunately, for the safety of the people there, I think it's time to be transparent and to let people know, because it eventually happened anyway.
Yep.
And people died, and that's not being reflected very well on an international level as well. So it comes back to bite us if we don't be honest about this thing.
Yeah, that's true. And then in fact, though, there was a rumor about the possible earthquake in Pang, just like you shortly mentioned. Apparently, it was also reported it was a false news. And a lot of this kind of unnecessary news are spreading also. And that's not the way to educate people. They should release and double check from the meteorological department as well whether it is something that newsworthy to carry to the public or not.
And I think all Malaysians should start preparing, whether you're in Sabah or Sarawak or KL or Penang. Just stand by in case something happens. That's the best way to do it, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I think also the best one is to have a proper education system in this country for sure. Well, let's move on to the next topic. This is something that we grew up with this actor, and also our older generation as well. And we will remember him like for longest time, because the movies, all the films, his works basically, that remains. And then perhaps our next generation will also be able to watch his classical, all those movies in the future.
And of course, we are talking about Christopher Lee, who is the most famous for his role in Lord of the Rings as Saruman, who was such a badass villain.
And also Dracula.
Exactly. Dracula is another movie that we grew up watching, like you were saying. Even our parents remember him, our grandparents remember him, we remember him.
Oh, yes,
well.
for sure.
And he has actually managed to touch the hearts of probably 3 or 4 different generations. And also, what's interesting about this is it seems he died last Sunday.
Yep.
But his wife refused to let the news out to the public until she made sure that all the friends and family were informed first, and they were given enough time to deal with it, and then she broke the news to the media.
I think that's very wise steps
Very
that she
thoughtful
took.
as well.
Yeah, and also when she delivered the news, and she was already in the right mind to deliver the news without the panicking mode or even in being emotional. So I guess this is something that we can also learn when it comes to media announcement. So it also shows that this couple, they already know how to handle when it comes to certain situation or even making an announcement.
Well, yeah, but they have been around for a long time, and they're quite experienced. So Christopher Lee has actually appeared in over 200 films, and of course some of it are timeless movies that you can watch over and over again, regardless of what year is it. And a couple of reactions from Tim Burton, who is of course a renowned Hollywood director who has worked with Christopher Lee on at least 5 films, who said that he is the last of his kind and a true legend, which means that there can never ever be another person like him.
Yeah. And
also the Prime Minister of England has also tweeted that David Cameron, he said that Christopher Lee is actually the titan of the golden age of cinema. And titan is actually quite a big word to show the contributions and the effect Christopher Lee has left with us.
Perhaps over the weekend, or if we have time soon, I think we should all watch his films, and then just to sort of remember and remind of our old days together, because those movies are very classical.
Yeah, and we could have a Christopher Lee marathon, and of course, I think the most popular choice would be Lord of the Rings.
Yes, for sure.
That's his most notable, probably my favorite role as well, apart from Dracula. When it comes to Lord of the Rings.
That brings back a lot of memories. Anyways, we'll take a short break here, and when we return, we'll deliver the news on the politics side of Southeast Asia. ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia. Welcome back to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing, and you're still with Grace
and Gauri with our ASEAN Daily for this Friday morning.
Yes, that's correct. And then this time we'll be discussing and also give commentaries on the politics of Southeast Asia. But let's just stay in Malaysia for a while, and then we have yeah, because we've got this news on 1MDB, which is very, very super duper controversial in Malaysia. And guess who spoke about this finally?
I'm guessing it's Dr. Mahathir.
Yes. Yeah, Dr. Mahathir said he chose to speak out on these controversial issues, 1MDB, because no other person dared to do so.
And of course, he actually came forward yesterday and said, yes, I'm behind the 1MDB crisis. Do you have a problem with that? Okay, no, he didn't actually say the second part. But like you mentioned, he said that he wanted to speak up because if they keep being silent about this would actually lead to Barisan National's loss in the next election, which is coming up real soon. And he said, I admit that I am behind the crisis because there is a climate of fear in this country. And there were billions of ringgit that was lost by 1MDB, but people are too afraid to say anything about it because they are scared of the consequences. And this is very, very interesting because after what happened last Friday at the Nothing to Hide forum, there was a majority of people saying that, oh, Tun M was really brave. He just came in, he told everyone the truth, or at least he tried to before the police stopped him, and he sort of became like a national hero again. I mean, he already is, but people liked him even more because it seemed he was seen as a vulnerable person at that time, someone who was trying to get the truth out, but was stopped by the police. But there were also a few people who came forward and said, how can you trust this guy when he was the one who created the whole climate of fear in Malaysia in the first place? And I think he admitted that as well, to saying that yes, there is a climate of fear, and it's probably started with his administration in Malaysia.
It's very interesting, like you said, Gauri, and then there are a lot of mixed feedbacks when it comes to Tun Mahathir as well as our current Prime Minister Najib. And this regarding the issues on the 1MDB, he finally decided to step up and also speak out about this. And we will be getting a lot of different feedbacks on this later on, but for now he said that he had desisted at first because he also did not want Najib to be questioned, but attempts to reach the Prime Minister privately and it just led no results anyways. That's when he decided to speak out about it. But I don't know how far and how much information he'll be giving the public and how transparent he can be, because after all, to Mahathir, he's also a politician still. And he still somehow holds partially the power when it comes to his position. And then there are people, I meant the followers of Tun Mahathir still in this Malaysia.
And well, that's an interesting point that you brought up, because what he did mention last Friday was that I'm going to tell all of you the truth from the start. And actually, yeah, I was thinking, how would he know the whole story about how it started out if he wasn't actually indirectly involved in the crisis? So I have to say that it isn't really much of a surprise when he actually admitted that, yes, I'm behind the whole thing.
Yeah.
And if you really look back at his administration, there were a lot of scandals during his time too. And I think the most notable one is the Port Klang Free Zone, or is known as the PKFZ scandal in Malaysia, which they also lost billions of money, and someone even wrote a book about it.
Yeah.
And you can get it. But the thing is, of course, Mahathir wasn't perfect. He had his own share of scandals, and now we have Najib as well. And of course, I'm not condoning this,
Right.
but for Mahathir to make it seem like he's in the right and it's only Najib is in the wrong, of course, it's not right for him to project things to be that way. But that's right, the people will not really know. Sometimes they don't really think when somebody is out there and he says, okay, I'm going to tell you the truth, and people like that, at this time when people are just craving to hear those kind of words from the government.
Of course, for sure.
Whoever says it just wins the game.
Yes.
When you use words like truth, transparency,
Of
and
course.
honesty.
And also this is what people are very thirst for. They want to hear that sort of honest level of opinions from the government. And it is very interesting because too, Mahathir has been sort of bashing our prime minister's attitude and his actions and how he has been running the country so far. And he also mentioned to Mahathir mentioned that, so I had to go public. Najib has destroyed UMNO and BN. I know he would lose the next election, and then the whole country will see the turmoil as no party would have the majority to run the country. Well, he has got a point there, but it also looks like he's trying his best at this situation, at this moment, to make sure that people hear what they need to hear.
I think that's right. Well, he said that Najib has destroyed UMNO and BN, and it's well, I understand how he feels because he was there also as the head of BN and as the president of UMNO, and he would know exactly how it feels and what are the things that he has to be done for the country. And of course, BN is the most dominant party in Malaysia at the moment. But this is also something that has never happened before for a former prime minister to step forward to openly criticize the current prime minister and to also go on stage and say, I'm going to tell you all the truth about this guy and what he's been doing, all the screw-ups, all the scandals, all the mistakes that he's done.
Yeah.
And that's something that's very new for Malaysians. It was even new for me when I was there. Like, wow, this can actually happen in Malaysia.
This story is another one to be written in the history of Malaysian history. And this issue on MDB is currently being investigated by Bank Negara, Public Account Committee, and also the Auditor General after the accumulating debts of 42 million ringgit in just 6 years since its inception, so-called.
And I think if, for BN to actually, if they want to win the next election, 1MDB is not the only issue that they should look at, because the people have been complaining about a lot of things, even our Prime Minister's wife spending a lot of money on shoes and bags and whatnot. And so if they really want to switch things up, they want to win the next election, fix 1MDB, tell the people what's really happening, be honest, be transparent, and just give the people what they want.
Exactly. And we have another very interesting news coming from ASEAN region as a whole, because we are pretty much aware of Indonesia participation when it comes to ASEAN. But apparently this nation is the one who called other ASEAN member countries, including Malaysia, Singapore, to enhance the regional cooperation and the coordination to provide protection for migrant workers in the region, and which is very, very good news coming from Indonesia, because when it comes to protection for migrants, it also relates to human rights, and human rights issues in ASEAN region is very, very serious.
Right, and it's interesting also because of the relationship between Indonesia and Malaysia. For some reason, it has always had some sort of a tension.
Right.
Whether it's because of culture, because of food, because of certain art forms, that we always have this argument about which came from where, and we also, of course, then had problems because of Indonesian workers coming over and they were not being treated well. So I think it makes sense for Indonesia to step up and to call out not only for Malaysia but Singapore and other countries in the region that if they have migrant workers, do something to protect them. And I think they were also trying to sign a few agreements and a few pacts as well to make sure that that the migrant workers who come over here will be protected and they will get access to their basic rights, their basic pay, and not get tortured or exploited by their employers.
That's right. And that the minister expressed his concern and also warned that the free flow of workers' economic integration under ASEAN Economic Community that will be implemented at the end of 2015 and also would make the labor issues more complex, and the region should have a legally binding instrument to protect the workers' rights. At the same time, he also urged ASEAN member countries to enhance the bilateral and also regional cooperation to improve the workers' competence and also productivity in facing the ASEAN Economic Community. And those are all these very ambitious words that we always hear from ASEAN, not only from Indonesia's side, because those are also the factors that we have been dealing with in terms of flow of workers, immigrant workers, and immigrant workers including illegal and legal workers at the same time.
But I feel like this is something that is quite simple. Well, you mentioned that this is also a human rights issue, and I always think that human rights issues should not even be an issue in the first place, because how hard it is for you to treat another person like a human being. I mean, it's pretty much common sense, and we've already I don't think something like this, when it comes to migrant workers or human rights issues, should be the reason for strained relationships between countries, especially Indonesia and Singapore. Three of us are pretty much close neighbors, and something like this should not be standing in the way, because we have so much more to achieve in line with the ASEAN Economic Community. We're trying to build high-speed trains, highways. We're trying to come up together to build infrastructures, economic bilateral trade agreements, and for something like this to stand in the way, if it doesn't get addressed now, it could also explode in the long run, because we can't deny it, there are a lot of migrant workers in Malaysia who are from Indonesia, and same with Singapore as well. And this is something very basic that Malaysia should address almost immediately to assure Indonesia, assure their president that whichever worker, whoever it is that you send over here, they will be protected, they will be safe, and they will safely return to the country when the time comes.
So we hope that ASEAN, not only Indonesia, Malaysia, or Singapore, but the other 7 other countries from ASEAN be able to come up with their own proper mechanism as ASEAN way to protect the migrant workers soon and near future. So we'll take another short break, and after this we'll bring news on the economic and the business side of Southeast Asia. ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia. Hello, welcome back to Durian ASEAN. You're with Grace.
Hi, this is Gauri, and you're listening to us on our ASEAN Daily, where we bring you news from all over Southeast Asia.
And we have very interesting news here regarding the goods for sex exchange. And the UN peacekeepers regularly barter goods for sex with people in the countries, and also the world body is meant to be helping, according to them.
Of course, when it comes to UN, we always look up to them and expect them to be helping people, and they're supposed to be the peacekeepers of the world, but they have actually been misusing that power to actually trade in the goods for sex from the people that they are meant to be helping. And this is something that is shocking and
It
very
is.
sad as well.
And then they are paid with cash, jewelry, mobile phones, and all other items by giving out their own services. And the report apparently it says 480 sexual exploitation and abuse claims were made in between 2008 and 13, and 1/3 of this allegation involved children.
That's very sad
Yeah.
to involve children as well in this whole barter goods for sex that they've been doing. And for the Associated Press, which has also obtained the document, they say that 231 people in Haiti were actually interviewed. And well, it seems that they also mentioned something about this transactional sex that they had with the peacekeepers. And they said in case that the peacekeepers don't pay them, the women will actually withhold their badges so they can threaten them to the media or to other people via social media as well to expose what they've been doing. And up to 51 of these allegations were made in 2014, down from 66 just a year before. So well, I really don't know what to say. This is something that is very sad that UN as a nation that guards the peace of the world, and that they are supposed to be in charge of this, but their officers has been misusing the power, and I think UN should look at this almost immediately.
Yes, for sure. Well, let's move on to our economic and business side of Southeast Asia. So apparently Laos, they seek second loan from China to build the northern road, and they are planning to, ask for the second multi-million-dollar loan to build a 90-kilometer or a 56-mile road in the northern part of the country. And it was also after using previously borrowed funds for the same project to host a summit for Asian and European leaders.
And of course, now the government is seeking an additional 100 million loan from Exim Bank to build the road. And the government, as well as the Ministry of Public Works and Transport, has to make sure that the loan must go to the development of projects and that are also in the people's highest interest. That's always a tricky part, isn't it? When it comes to going both ways, that it goes to the project and it also serves the interest of the people at the same time. But there's not been much detail given to the public so far, and it seems some people have expressed their concern that this loan will only be used in such a way to create a conflict of interest. And I think Laos as a country, we know that it's not that well off in this region, and they will also be hosting the ASEAN, they'll be the chairman of ASEAN in 2016. They'll be taking over from Malaysia, and it must be putting a lot of pressure on them as well, which is why they are so pressured to borrow money and take loans from other countries to start improving the infrastructure in their country so they can look more presentable when they host world-class events.
And this is very interesting because Laos is one of the poorest country in ASEAN, and like you mentioned, because they will be chairing ASEAN next year, perhaps a bit of a pressure has hit the country, and also to hold the ASEAN summit. And a lot of stories are coming out because in Laos there aren't proper official sort of platforms for ASEAN summit to hold, even though Laos chaired the ASEAN way before, but it is just to give a lot of impression to other countries as well. And in fact, many road constructions projects in Laos lack transparency, and they also have a bit of an infrastructure problem as well. But then our question here is, will they be able to pay all the money they loan from the government, as well as are they up to the sort of the having the mechanism or structure system to be able to pay off the debt?
And when it comes to taking loans from a different country, it's not a very small matter because it's a huge amount. In this case, they are getting up to $100 million. That's a huge amount. like you mentioned, do they have the means to pay back?
Right.
And what are the other alternatives? What are the consequences actually if they don't actually get to pay China back? And when it comes to all this construction, as it is, they've already lacking transparency in their projects, and the money going missing and whatnot, which always happens when there's money involved.
Yes.
And all these little things are very tricky. And also, of course, this is also probably in line with the ASEAN summit that will be happening very soon. And of course, in Laos, when something like this, a big event is coming, I think it's understandable for the government to start improving the infrastructure, the condition of the country, but they should just keep in mind not to go overboard with the loans, and make sure that everything is done in moderation, that they can afford to pay back, and it won't come back to bite them and hurt their economy in the long run.
Well, but then it looks like they've already decided what they want to do to do something about the nation, but hopefully that they can come up with the proper paperwork and also policies when it comes to, loaning, when it comes to loan from other countries. Well, other serious news all the way from Korea. It's been going on for a few weeks already. This is regarding MERS. But apparently, a few industries such as cosmetic as well as airline industries are losing perhaps quite a number of amount due to this disease. It's been going on.
And more than 200,000 foreigners, mostly from China and Taiwan, have cancelled their visit to Korea this month. And this is apparently due to MERS, which is just spreading like wildfire in Korea. And this was confirmed by the Korea Tourism Organization. And the analysts are also saying that if the drop continues, it can be quite a blow to the entire industry, not only cosmetics.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it affects a lot of industries, not just cosmetics, airline. I'm sure it will hurt the entire tourism industry in the country. And it also usually draws on sales from duty-free shops that are in the airports. And this is one of the reasons why there's been more than 40% drop of the total cosmetic sales in Korea.
So MERS is alarming the whole nation apparently. And then one of the airlines that has the direct flight to Korea, which is Singapore Airlines, will waive the cancellation fees, also administration fee for refund, rebooking, or rerouting for this holding confirmed tickets to and from Seoul. It's also because of MERS outbreak. Well, it is very tricky, and also the country is handling with the system and also a lot of medical services so far, but it's really hard to just erase all this disease immediately, because it's spreading really fast, and for sure that it wouldn't get worse than this. Let's go for our SEA Games news. What do we have here, Gauri?
So for our SEA Games special, we have a couple of news where Malaysia actually beat Laos last night 3-1 in the final Group B match. So this was of course by the national under-23 team that came alive in the second half, because if you watch the game, the first half was actually quite bad. A lot of people thought like this is it for Malaysia, we're losing, we're going home, there's no hope. But in the second half, we bounced back, and we managed to beat Laos, and we are moving on to the next stage.
And I hope that we can move on even further, because Malaysia is still in the sort of contention for medals at SEA Games. And when it comes to ranking, just by looking at the number of medals that each country has won, Malaysia ranks about fourth. Yeah, in the SEA Games, and still Singapore is the first one, top rank.
We have about 98 medals now in Malaysia,
right.
But not too many gold medals, but we still have quite an impressive number. And of course, we have been tweeting about it and also posted some updates on Facebook if our listeners want to check it out. But they can always go to the SEA Games official website as well to check out the entire list of countries and how many gold, silver, bronze medals that each country has won so far.
All right. So shall we take another break? And when we return, we'll deliver more news from Southeast Asia on Socio-cultural part. ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia. Welcome back to Durian ASEAN. You're with Grace.
Hi, this is Gauri and you're listening to us on our ASEAN Daily.
And we are at the last segment of ASEAN Daily. Let's touch on it could be also very controversial issue, because when it comes to art scene in Malaysia, there aren't much freedom. And then this filmmaker, his film was banned in Malaysia, right? Mm-hmm. But then he will have his own film sort of launch in New York.
And this film is actually called Banglasia, which is an action comedy actually by controversial filmmaker Namewee, which has been banned, but it will be shown in the New York Asian Film Festival. And according to the festival director, who is Goran Topalovic, he said that they are actually proud to host the premiere of that movie, which is hilarious and has surreal comedy that touches on issues of political corruption,
right,
mass hysteria, immigration, as well as out-of-control nationalism. And I think these are pretty universal issues that anyone can relate to, not just Malaysians, Asians in general, people in Europe, America, South America, things like corruption, immigration. It's something that the whole world can relate to.
And also this story tells the group of multicultural individuals coming together during the time in which their cultural tolerance and understanding are being tested. So you're right, especially Malaysia and any other countries who hold a multicultural society can relate to this story of the film. So it's not only all about the Malaysia, but that perhaps Malaysia feels a bit sensitive with its country. The film was banned. However, it is something about all these artsy people in Malaysia. They still want to carry on, so they go outside of Malaysia. It could be very sad, and also it could be a good news at the same time, because outside of Malaysia, they still represent the Malaysian identity. So it is a positive side. However, not being able to showcase and launch their own product in Malaysia, that's a sad part.
It is, and according to Namewee, he said that I wanted to direct a film that I feel strongly about through the only way that I know, which is making films, being fun, being entertaining. And it seems that I don't think it's really the people of Malaysia that are sensitive to this. It's probably the government who fear what the people would feel or think, because I think usually when you ban something, people want to see it or read about it all the more, right?
Yes.
It makes them even more curious
for sure
to find out. And I think it's great that he's getting his chance somewhere else. But going back to you saying that it's sad that his own movie doesn't get premiered in the own country. I think this has been happening a lot in Malaysia, particularly, where a lot of talented people have to leave the country in order for them to shine and to make it big. And it seems like also the legislation in this country is really suppressing the freedom of expression and our creativity as well of our local talents.
Yes. Well, this brings a lot of worrisome and at the same time concerns when it comes to creativity or even the being innovative in this one nation. But at the same time, Gauri, I thought you had a news about durian.
Yes, I do have something very interesting to share about durians. Well, for those of you who are excited about eating durians, the durian season has started, so that's good news for everybody, or at least every Malaysian.
Right.
And usually June or July is about the durian season, so I think you can already see it in like trucks and all when you go out at night. So go out and get your durians within the next 2 months if you want to get the best of it. So of course, I think we're done for today.
Yes.
And don't forget to like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the daily podcasts.
And don't forget about our website, durianasean.com. And when you're on the go, download this app called TuneIn app and look for us at Durian ASEAN. Well, stay tuned with us because we have very interesting interviews coming up at Anything Can Happen Friday.